Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out new episodes of the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. If you missed an episode or want to get more information about the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Robert de Neve. He's the president and CEO at BriteLab. Robert, welcome to the show.
Hi, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think what you guys are doing is actually really cool and innovative. But maybe before we kind of get into BriteLab, let's get to know you a little bit better and kind of start off with where you grew up.
Sure. I grew up in the middle of Silicon Valley. It was called Santa Clara Valley in those days.
Okay.
I was surrounded by orchards and farmland.
Beautiful
It's
country.
been a great... Oh, it was beautiful. Beautiful. Still is. Just has
Sure.
a couple more buildings in it. But really watched this place grow and develop into the innovation capital of the world.
Sure. So you went to UC Santa Clara. What did you take there and why? What was the reasoning behind taking that?
Well, I went to several schools. I went to I have a kind of a polyglot education.
Okay.
First, I came up as an optical engineer. So I went to the University of Rochester, studied optics there, one of the best optical schools in the world. Then I went to San Jose City and went through their laser program, probably the best applied laser program around, and went to UC Santa Cruz for business management later on.
Okay. So what kind of got you into wanting to go into kind of technology and engineering, just because you were in kind of the heart of it, or kind of walk me through that?
Well, like many people in engineering, it can be traced back to, sci-fi,
Sure.
watching Star Trek, seeing what Spock did and Scotty,
Sure,
I mean,
that's
a
great.
lot of us, believe it or not, we're inspired as young kids by those programs. I just kind of followed that into engineering, and I was fortunate enough to be in the engineering and innovation capital of the world. So, I happened to be here, happened to like it, saw lasers and optics as the most sci-fi of the engineering disciplines, and got into that.
Sure. That's great. So you are president and CEO of BriteLab. Kind of walk me through it was originally E-Systems. So walk me through kind of how did it go from E-Systems to kind of BriteLab?
Okay. So we, like a lot of engineers in this valley, started in the semiconductor equipment industry. And a little known fact is that industry is one of the few American originated industries that are still dominated by American companies.
Really?
It's a big success story. Yes, it is. Big success story that nobody knows about.
Wasn't it kind of started in the late 60s, if I remember correctly? Was that correct?
Well, the chip guys, started this valley, and a bunch of people left Fairchild Cameron Instruments, right? And
Right,
HP was here, the Varian brothers were here. So there's a lot of tech guys here. And, the Fairchild guys started, building on what the guys did, with integrated circuits over at Motorola and other places. And it really started productizing in integrated circuits. So the chip guys started in the 70s, and then the equipment guys, the Applied Materials, Novellis's, Lam, KLA-10 cores, they kind of spun out of the chip guys, right? The chip guys said, look, we need equipment guys to focus on equipment while we focus on chips. And that's the industry I started in the late 70s.
Sure.
And we were all driven by Moore's Law, which means every year and a half crank out a new technology because chips were doubling in computing power and having in price. So that was the operational tempo. And as a result, even though we were faced with international onslaught of competition, we beat everybody back, and the chip equipment industry is still U.S. dominated.
Really?
And that's where we came out of that industry, and some of us decided to attack manufacturing and new product development as the next industry that needs to be saved.
Sure. So was that E-Systems, or walk me through that whole thing?
Right. So I started as an engineer at KLA-10 Core, moved into management, got into executive management, ran a robot company called Equip.
Okay, very cool.
We became the number one robot company in the world.
That's awesome.
And we had international competition built 200,000 of these wafer handling robots, modules, and systems. And we're very successful and decided that once we sold that company to start a company called Equip Business Systems,
Okay.
right, or E-Systems for short, to take that operating methodology that we used to be competitive worldwide, and now we sell that as a service or a solution set to other OEMs.
Okay. So how did you find the OEMs? Did you have previous relationships with them, or did you reach out to a bunch of them, or kind of a bit of both?
Yeah, well, the valley it's a big valley, but it's also a small valley at the same time. So a lot of us knew one another, and most of the executives running companies, nowadays were engineers in the old days. So we all kind of know each other, and you start using your network.
Sure.
So we were able to grow our company initially through that network and through the value proposition of and mantra of we're a company built by OEMs for OEMs.
Gotcha.
So the OEMs, the other product people, kind of like that for the first time in their supply chain, they had previous product guys, previous OEMs, now helping other OEMs be more successful.
Sure. So walk me through kind of how E-Systems turned into BriteLab, and kind of how is it similar and how is it the same or different?
Great question. So what we did, like many companies, we went out after several years of funding E-Systems ourselves and growing. We hit about $30 million a year. Was our peak when you combined our machine shop revenue in with our system design and integration revenue. We said, look, for us to grow into 50, 100, 200 million, and we're going to need outside money. So a year and a half ago, I went on a mission to look for a Series A strategic investor. We found one. They put money in, and we decided that because we had such lofty next step goals that we wanted to kind of repackage a little bit, and we chose the name BriteLab to kind of show this inflection point of going from a regional local manufacturing, new product tech introduction and technology company to a global one.
Sure. So what exactly does BriteLab do? Because it's quite intense and awesome what you guys do kind of just in the Valley.
Yeah, so I always tell people we're the world's first and only OEM certified product innovation and realization company. And what that means is...
Sure. That was going to be my next question to you. Sorry, that's what I was going to interrupt you. So go ahead.
So I was just going to say what that really means is that we're a bunch of ex-product guys who did it for 40 years, the right way and the wrong way, learned from the wrong ways, and then, learned from doing it the right way. And now what we do is we help other companies accelerate product development and realize that product. And realization means doing the prototype and new product introduction, ramp it, release it, get into volume manufacturing, and then optimize it from a value engineering standpoint.
Okay, so obviously you guys are building physical things, and they're probably anywhere from, kind of just some technical components to kind of non-technical components, and then kind of everywhere in between, or what type of stuff do you guys kind of usually work on?
So there's a spectrum of products kind of in our world, right? We look at products through this lens, and it shows on one end of this spectrum, it's industrial products, which are characterized by high complexity but relatively low volume. So these are B2B or business-to-business sales, right? We sell equipment to other companies. So those are industrial products. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have consumer products, which are characterized by relatively lower complexity and considerably higher volume. We saw the need for a company that could do both. Because with this Internet of Things revolution that's going on, we predicted there would be a family of hybrid products, which have the complexity of an industrial product, but the quantity of a consumer product. For example, a robot. A robot is the quintessential example of this hybrid, high mix, high complexity, high volume product that's coming on the scene. And we felt people with our experience were the best ones to help customers develop and launch those.
Oh, very cool. Okay, so let's go on the robot concept for a second. So I have an idea for some sort of robot that does something. At what point would I come to you at BriteLab, whether it's like on a napkin? Do I need to have kind of a rough prototype that kind of works, or where do you guys kind of fit in that puzzle?
Oh, great question, Kevin. A lot of people don't fully realize what it takes to build a product. You have to go through this crucible, this death march called the product life cycle.
Okay.
And a lot of people know it intellectually, but they don't, know it or practice it, practically and on an everyday basis. We do. So we have 6 phases of the product life cycle. So if you came to me, right, I would, because of our expert, domain expertise and being OEMs and product people since the 70s, we would be able to factually tell you where you are in that product development and life cycle.
Okay.
And there's 6 phases, right, that we've identified over the years. The first phase is industrial design, right? The second phase is product engineering. Third is rapid prototyping. Fourth is new product introduction. Fifth is manufacturing. Sixth is product support.
Sure.
So once we figured out where you were, you would plug into our system. It's like a node.
Got you.
You plug in, and we would immediately provide you with a demonstrated solution set, and then help you continue your way on to full realization.
Okay, so obviously, so do I have to come to your facility, or how does that kind of work?
Well, it's great if you came here. Obviously, It's always better face-to-face, but we have telepresence, robot technology, and with all the other technologies available, there's a lot of remote assessment and evaluation we can do. So we deal with people in Scandinavia. We deal with people in Asia. I'm dealing with people from New Orleans right now. And our goal is to assess where their product is, what the product maturity index or PMI value is, and then deliver the known solution, right, set to them so that they can continue to do what they do best, which is product innovation, and let us handle the rest of that operating system, right, that's needed to bring a product to fruition.
Sure. So how do you work with me in the sense of, like, do I pay you a fee? Do you guys take equity, a little bit of both? How does that kind of work?
We've done all of the above. One of the things that we focus on is by having a highly flexible and adaptable business system or business operating system. We use that term a lot.
Sure. Because
the analogy I use on my tours is that we're the OS, the operating system. And our tours are pretty unique because you can see the whole product life cycle all in one facility. It's almost like a showcase. You look out the window, you see everything from industrial design to engineering to new product introductions all laid out. People have said in the past, it looks like a museum in here. And kind of,
it's
a functional museum depicting the product development and life cycle. And so what we've done is, we've done time and material, right? People just want to hire engineering time, or they want us to fix something, or just ramp and build something. Or we've taken, equity in a company. If we don't do that as much anymore because of the risk profile, but we have done it. But the basic engagement is one of OEM to OEM, right? True peer-to-peer collaboration. When customers come to see us and talk to us, they immediately register with something. They're like, this is different than my other suppliers. And it's because we're product guys. So we speak the same language, have the same experiences in business culture. So we're the only company that can provide true OEM to OEM collaboration.
Sure. No, I think that's great. So you guys are in San Jose. Are you guys planning on opening other kind of locations, or is one enough, or is it just kind of too early to kind of tell?
Well, that's one of my favorite questions, Kevin, because as an old engineer, now as an executive trying to grow a company, I look at this facility as a product, right? And we have just finished finished beta testing it, and it's released. Customers are using it, and now my job as the product manager, if you will, is to clone it. And we have a very unique cloning system. We have plans to take this facility, our product, which is the perfect size in our opinion, 55,000 square feet. It can handle 150, 200 people, do, $75 to $100 million, maybe 125. And we think that's the perfect size. It's got the flexibility of a small company, but the stability and structure of a large company. So this size is the size that we plan on cloning. There's plans to have 7 of these sites.
Wow.
Everywhere there's a high-tech cluster in the U.S., and now we're talking to Europe about a possible site or 2 there.
That's great. So, and I don't know if you can kind of mention any product names that people would have heard of, but what type of stuff has kind of come and kind of, that has BriteLab kind of put out in the last, few years that, you were maybe passionate about? And maybe even if you can't mention like specific product names, maybe just like sectors or verticals.
So we're very diverse, having come from the semi-equipment industry where you're building these crazy machines to build ever, more powerful chips.
Sure.
You learn a lot about a lot of different technologies. So you can apply that to things like biomed, automobile industry, defense, analytical instrumentation, alternative energy. So we're in all of those verticals.
Yeah.
And we've had most of our companies are small, Internet of Thing type companies. So if you walk through our facility, you'd see all sorts of crazy little widgets. But we also have worked with, Fortune 500 companies and big names like Tesla. Sure. We built the first 150,000 charge ports, where you kind of plug into the car. Yeah, we built all those. Man. Oh yeah, So then we've had companies. We've had Google, right? We did some design work for Google. So we have big name companies and we have kind of up and coming companies. Probably one of the coolest products we're building right now is a self-balancing skateboard called One Wheel. And you can go to One Wheel, go to YouTube and look up One Wheel. The coolest product we've ever built, and it's a classic hybrid product with the high complexity of an industrial, mechatronic robotic systems, but with the consumer appeal and quantity of, a skateboard, right? Kind of blending those two, and you get this very unique, highly addictive ride, and it feels like you're snowboarding or surfing, even though you're kind of cruising on cement. So please check that out. That's a perfect example of what's to come.
Sure. So do you guys do kind of a lot of hardware and software integration where, you'll build, I don't know, like, does the One Wheel have like an app that I can control or like you have like a little robot on the site? Like, is there like an iPad or an app or something that you guys would work with, or do you guys kind of stay away from that, or how does that work?
So typically the customers that come here are brilliant customers, brilliant engineers, right? Sure. And they come up with the software, and then a lot of times we do the hardware for them.
Got you.
Because they're software focused. In the case of One Wheel, these guys are sharp. They came to us with the whole system. We just helped them fine tune it, get it ready for manufacturing, the NPI, new product introduction portion. So it really depends on who your customer is. We've done it, and we have the ability to do software development, hardware development, and integration. But every customer is different, and they pick and choose.
Got you. So how do you decide, or do you guys have like a set of guidelines that allow you or to decide who you work with or what type of products or projects you take on?
Yes. As a growing and developing company, one of the benefits of being an established company is you can pick and choose a little better than when you're a startup.
Sure.
In the old days when we first started in 2007, we took on anybody, right?
Sure.
But now we're a little more selective, so we use what's called a Qualification Scorecard, or a Q score. And every customer, every lead, that potential customer that comes through here, we run them through our qualification process, just like they're running us through some kind of supplier, right?
Sure.
Process. And we come up with a Q score. And on a scale of 0 to 100, someone like BMW, right, that came through here, or Intel, or they're like in the mid to high 90s, right?
Sure.
And then some company that has 2 kids working out of their mother's kitchen, they might get a Q score of 15 or 20.
Right.
So I could, without getting into detail, I could tell you there has been a big shift in Q scores. When we first started, the average Q score was 25 to 30. Now the average score is 90 to 95.
Wow. So you have to be you have to know what you, like if I come to you with something, I have to kind of have tested my idea, make sure it's pretty much ready to go, or at least have a good idea of what I'm building. Not just kind of like, I got this idea, you guys figure it out?
Yes, that's one qualifier, but probably the most important is funding, right? You need to be funded and have a runway long enough to pay your hardware bills. Right?
Sure. And
a lot of the kids will do their software on their own, but the hardware they need help with. So they tend to run out. The real low Q customers tend to have family and friend funding, and that stuff runs out pretty quick.
Sure. So, and obviously this is going to be different based on what you're trying to build, but is there like a bare minimum that if you're like, I'm trying to build something in the hardware space, that you need at least 100 grand, $500,000, $1 million? Is there kind of a range, or is it too hard to tell just because it's such a broad thing to ask for?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I would say it is. It's significant. It's in the high 6 figures, low 7 figures. If you want to do a complex hardware product, you need a runway like that.
So I'm curious, for people that have never actually built a product, that want to build a product, can you maybe dive a little bit deeper in kind of the general process? Like we kind of covered it a little bit, but like if I have like an idea, say go from like the napkin phase to like getting it into my hand where you could make, 100,000 of them. Is like, and what I'm asking, I guess, is like, obviously you have to prototype, but is there usually like 3 or 4 revisions? Is it usually like only 1 or 2? Is it 10? Just kind of walk me through kind of the whole process from kind of napkin to actually having it physically in my hand.
Sure. We've had people come in, like let's say 2 salespeople, right?
Sure.
Came in and said, look, at my customers that I sell these widgets to want a bigger widget.
Sure.
We're sales guys. We can market it, but we can't design it. So they would come in, they would sit down with us, let's say in January.
Okay.
By February, we'd have working prototypes.
Like 1 month February, or like the following year February?
No. We could get working prototypes in 6 to 6 weeks, sometimes 8 weeks.
That's crazy fast.
That's
awesome.
We can move that fast. So you can get something. Sometimes it depends on the complexity. If it's low complexity, you can have a prototype in days. High complexity, it's usually a month and a half, 2 months. Then what we do is we do testing. That might take another couple months, right? So now you're in the April-May time frame. Then you get some beta units, right, that you send to customers. Sure. And then you get some information back. And here you are in July, August. And, with any luck, you can have this thing, selling in quantity in the fourth quarter. So you could have a 9-month rollout on a medium complexity, a part with medium, an assembly or a product with medium complexity.
Wow.
Higher complexity, you might increase it. Lower, it would become a lot less.
That's insanely fast. Like I've had in the past kind of other offshore kind of hardware manufacturers, and like you guys are you're cutting time in like by half, if not more than that, right? Like, and I think that's due to the fact that you guys have the ability to do everything in-house, correct?
Yeah, we're pretty fast. Now, of course, I do want to add a caveat, right?
Sure,
it depends on, there's 2 things. The customer needs to have all their data and deliverables into us. So we call that the ADI milestone, right? ADI, if you're a program manager here, there's 2 milestones for you to get this kind of accelerated product development and launch. ADI, and you work with your customers to do that, and then AMI, which is all materials in from the supply chain.
Okay.
Right? So if those 2 milestones are on track and under control, this facility rocks and rolls.
Sure. No, that's awesome. I think that's actually quite fascinating. And I think that's one of your big kind of selling points why people should use you guys is you guys can do kind of everything in-house, correct?
Yes, we have everything in one facility. It's a integrated solution set, as we like to say, and the fact that we're ex-OEMs can't be overstated.
Okay.
I've had a couple, people ask me questions like, we had IDEO in here, which is one of the top design firms in the world, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And they came in, and we had, meticulously engineered one of their prototypes and one of their designs into a prototype that almost matched their initial, design concept perfectly.
Wow.
And that usually doesn't happen, right?
Sure.
Because you go from artistic license to practical, application, and you lose some of the coolness.
Sure.
But we did a pretty decent job, and they asked why, and people were kind of like, well, there's this, there's that, and then my answer was, guys, we're it's nothing special. We're just ex-OEMs. Right? We're ex-product guys. We've done it for 40 years. We're not brilliant. We're just battle scarred.
That's actually a really good way of putting it. But I think that's also really useful, right? Because nothing is more useful than you don't understand how important having experience is until you have experience.
Absolutely. Well, a few years ago, if you were a gray-haired guy in your 50s in Silicon Valley, you were a dinosaur. Sure. Now people are looking for us because we're guys that have been around and have built complex machines and designed complex products, and all of a sudden, there's a big void because we've outsourced everything.
Right.
And this country has forgotten how to do manufacturing and advanced, new product introduction when it comes to hardware.
Sure.
And so there's a generation of us, luckily, are still kicking, that aim to bring it back and teach the next generation.
Sure. No, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? And I think that adds people that have never been through it, whether building hardware or software or both, it's like insane how much you need people like yourself that have been there, right? Because sometimes the stupidest thing that you're spending hours on, if you just like pick up the phone or call you or one of your team members and just say like, hey, I have this problem, and you're just like, oh yeah, it's just this. It's like a 30-second fix instead of me spending hours on something, right? Or researching it online or trying something. And obviously, like if you're just doing software, it's a lot easier to try stuff in code. But when you're actually building something physical, a lot of times you actually need to like make it physically to actually try it to see if it works, right? And you guys have the ability to do that, within hours or days or however long it takes to make like a new version of my prototype or whatever I'm trying.
Absolutely. It's called hardware for a reason, Kevin. Otherwise,
sure.
If it was easy, we'd call it funware, right? That's why I always tell my young engineers, it's not called funware for that reason.
Sure.
And it's very hard. It's very hard and requires a lot of discipline and experience. And I'm just grateful that there's another industrial revolution going on. This whole Internet of Things.
Totally.
And hardware is now being connected and digitized and made into smart pieces of equipment and machinery. And all of a sudden, advanced manufacturing guys like us, guys that understand how to do new product introduction and integrate hardware and software, are becoming, very, very key. And our company, BriteLab, productizes that and is now and will now scale that capability to all the OEMs that need it.
Sure. So you probably get asked this a lot, but I'm curious for people listening to the show that have never done hardware before and are looking to build something, what advice do you tell them, or like where do you tell them to kind of start?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing is to appreciate it, right? You need to be. If you don't appreciate something, you'll take it for granted, and you just it won't. It just won't work for you. So you have to appreciate that hardware. Has its own subtleties. Just because you're not a when I was coming up and I was a hardware guy for a generation or two, we were second-class citizens because software and the internet and now apps and all that. But hardware has its place. Everything is molecules and atoms. It's not bits and bytes only,
Sure.
right? The world is still, last time I checked, a real tactile, physical place.
Sure.
So you have to have that appreciation for hardware and not look down on it.
Interesting.
So I would say that's the first lesson to learn. The second lesson is to find a sensei, right? We call ourselves business or sensei sometimes. We have a very strong Eastern and martial arts kind of philosophy at the foundation of our company.
Okay.
And we consider ourselves hardware senseis. And, we can guide people new to that field in the right direction. So it's very difficult to learn it quick on your own. It just is. So the next step two would be, find somebody that understands it, has worked with it, and has, succeeded at it, right? That's key because there's a lot of people that, were hardware based that lost the game because hardware has, it's painful. Excess inventory is the biggest killer of companies. Right? One of the biggest killer of companies. So you got to do that. And then the third piece would be have a highly collaborative and open-minded relationship. You do those three things, and you'll be off to a good start.
Okay. No, that's interesting. So I'm curious, do you guys, like if I have an idea and I need X amount of funding to execute it, do you help startups find the investment, or is it up to the startup to find the investment themselves?
We do help people.
Okay.
I had an angel investor arm associated with our company when I started it as part of our model.
Yeah.
I put it on hold for a while to concentrate on getting the hardware out the door, and we have recently looking at bringing it back, but through collaboration with Sandhill Road.
Right.
So we have a program called the OEM in Residence program.
Okay.
We noticed that Sandhill Road guys all have entrepreneurs in residence, EIR guys.
Right.
Great, smart, brilliant kids and CEOs that have done some fantastic things and that help the partners and the VC firms do due diligence.
Right.
We've always recommended you need to counterbalance that, right, the yin to that yang, with an OEM in residence, and that's who we are.
I got
so
you.
Our company is providing, gratis OEM in residence services to the Sandhill Road and the investment community, and we're helping several firms, with some of their challenges, and they in turn will, forward us to people that may need our services.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess like too, especially if you guys open new locations, you're probably going to need, you might have to help with funding for some of the projects just because obviously Silicon Valley is such a, intense kind of community of people looking to build stuff where, and like you did say though, that like you'll only open in kind of major centers, but I think having the ability to fund some of that could really help you guys, right? And it makes sense. You guys are looking at that.
Absolutely. In fact, on our roadmap, my chief strategy officer and business partner, Jay Jung, is a brilliant businessman and entrepreneur, and he's actually, even though we're collaborating with Sandhill Road, he's actually looking at ways that we might, bring back our investment and venture arm in a more formal way. So. It's a little too early to talk about it, but he's got some great initiatives he's pushing on that front.
So we kind of touched on it throughout the show, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into exactly what you guys have in your space because it's huge. You have lots of equipment and kind of gear. And I think it makes sense to cover a little bit of the types of stuff that you guys have at BriteLab.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have, it's an engineer's kind of playhouse, if you will. We have in our machine shops, we have 5-axis, fully automated, state-of-the-art CNC machines that can, machine a perfect sphere.
Okay.
They're lights out machines that, use programming. They run, all weekend. A lot of complex parts can be run unmanned. So we have, several of those. We have 3D printers. Okay. We use Type A machines as our 3D printing partner. They're also a customer of ours. We actually, they do all the design and development work. We do all the building and support work for them. So we have the classic OEM to OEM relationship there that's working out fine. And we have a battery of their printer pods, which are these really cool parallel process printer pods that can do higher throughput 3D printing, both production and prototype.
Oh, cool.
So we're very proud of that relationship, and that's going along extremely well. Then you have a lot of other instrumentation, that you would see in any engineering lab. But I think that the state-of-the-art machining and 3D printing that we can do here is definitely the standout equipment area.
No, it must be cool just to walk through the floor some days and just see what people are working on. I can imagine that being really cool.
Yeah, because all our engineers and designers are out on the same floor as our prototypers and production people. So it's a very communal and highly collaborative environment. And, when all the cells, the factory cells and the design, stations are humming, it's a fascinating scene.
Sure. So I'm curious, though, and I'm sure you get asked this sometimes at least, what about working on products that are maybe a little bit more secretive? How do you guys kind of handle that?
So we have a protocol called our Sequestering Protocol.
Okay.
And it's been developed to a high degree of efficiency in the semiconductor equipment industry. Again, the industry where most of us are from and did all our engineering time in. Sure. And there we routinely had suppliers that built competitive products next to each other. And there's ways to physically and through, firewalls and through process control, engineering controls, change controls. There's a lot of elements to our sequestering process. Gotcha. That, has been working for companies for 30 years. So we don't have the problem today. Okay. But if Coke and Pepsi wanted us to do some, robot bottling equipment, and we would clearly be able to handle that.
Got you. No, that's awesome. I figured that was kind of something that you guys have dealt with and sorted out, and especially in your career, you've probably gone through that numerous times, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's always, we're all about accelerating the product development of our customers and providing IP-safe manufacturing solutions. So it's part of our, business model. It's part of our value proposition, and it's part of our history and heritage. So, yeah, that is not an issue.
So, no, that's great. So we're kind of coming to the end, but I'm curious about one last thing. So the product's ready and we're all happy with it, and I have, been through the beta and everything. Do you guys handle kind of the mass manufacturing where I need 100,000 or 1 million of whatever I'm trying to make? Or do you have to get that done with a partner, or how does that kind of work?
Oh, good question. So we have, let me back up a step.
Sure.
You need to, again, think of us as business senseis or solution providers, right?
Okay.
Another example I've always used is that the product development and life cycle is like a Mount Everest, right? It's a difficult thing to climb. Sure. And we're kind of the Sherpas because we've been doing it for so long, and we help, the tourists or the adventurers make it up that hill, right? And they get all the credit, and we don't care. Sure. Right? That's kind of the model.
Okay.
The metaphor we use a lot. So when a customer goes from one phase of the product life cycle to the other, let's say they go from the hatchery, which we call our new product introduction phase,
Okay.
to the factory, which is the name we've given our manufacturing phase. So we do all the low, volume production here in the hatchery. That's no problem because it's a mix of prototype and pilot, right? Alpha, beta,
Sure.
gamma units. But once we release it, we help pick the IP safe volume manufacturing solution.
Okay.
And there's generally three paths that we can take a customer on. Path number one is keep it here. We've done 15, 20,000 units a month of widgets here in the middle of Silicon Valley.
Wow, that's awesome.
People are stunned when they hear that, but
Totally.
we've done it.
That's great.
Yeah, so we can do it here for certain products and certain volumes, right?
Sure.
Number two, yes, they can go offshore,
Okay.
but let us help you find the IP safe low cost region.
Right.
And we have established and vetted partnerships
Sure.
with people that are not in China, they're not in that part of the world. They're in IP safe regions, and
Gotcha.
we could talk more about and get more detail on it. But we have partnerships that are safe, right?
Sure.
If they want to go that route. But last but not least is really what we recommend, and that's this other hybrid approach where we can automate their lines. We could design, because we're automation guys, right? We're all
Right.
ex-robot engineers. So we can design a customized cell or a customized factory for them. They can even put their name on it, and it's powered by BriteLab, right? So they can have all the benefits of a factory with a big sign, and people drive by and go, wow, these guys are building in the U.S., but we are running the factory for them, and so they can stay focused on innovation. And we are designing automated processes so that we can give them the lowest cost per unit possible in this region or somewhere in the U.S. Right?
Sure. No, that's great. So you kind of mentioned it, and I'm curious, what do you classify, what does IP safe mean for people that don't really understand the space?
Great question, Kevin. So it's all about, when people ask, Robert, what are you doing? Shouldn't you be retired? Shouldn't you be doing something? And I always tell them, look, guys, it's an important mission we're on. It's about saving jobs in the U.S., bringing jobs back, and keeping IP safe.
Sure.
Right? And when we mean safe, is where it was generated, which is usually here, we want to keep it. Right?
Sure.
And so intellectual property is basically, a big chunk of the value of your company if you're a hardware company, right? It's how much intellectual property you have, how can you keep it safe, how can you prevent it from being diffused or stolen or
Sure.
copied or whatever, right?
Sure.
And what we're all about is the product life cycle, as I mentioned. Early life, that IP is very fresh and very vulnerable. It's like a baby, right? You want to protect your child.
Sure.
Right? You're not going to send it overseas to boarding school, right?
Sure.
When it's 6 months old, who does that? Nobody.
Right.
So why do you do it with your IP? And so as that IP matures, and we have ways of measuring it, right? I referred earlier to the Product Maturity Index,
Sure.
PMI. That's a way of measuring IP. As it matures, it becomes less vulnerable. When it's 20, when you have that baby of yours is 20, yeah, maybe you'll send it to boarding school overseas now.
That's a good way of putting it.
Or 18 or whatever. You're safer. It's safer.
Sure.
But not before, right?
Right.
So what we're all about is, if your IP is fresh and it's vulnerable, keep it as close to you as possible.
Which makes sense.
After it becomes less fresh, starts to become a non-issue to you, then let us look at helping you go somewhere else using our vetted network of partners.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So I don't know if you ever get asked this, and you probably do, but I'm very curious. You have access to this entire thing. Is there any personal projects that you're building? And you don't have to tell me necessarily like a specific thing, but like, are you currently building some sort of hardware thing just in your kind of, maybe not spare time because you probably don't have any, you're running a startup, but like, are you working on something just out of curiosity?
Yeah, it's funny you should ask. We actually have a IoT product of our own. It's called the Grill Tender.
Okay.
You can go to grilltender.com and check it out. It's the world's first IoT and internet-connected grill. We have automated the temperature control process, being robot engineers. We did that. It's got a really cool steampunk design. We built a few hundred of these things.
Okay.
And it's kind of a little side project. Keeps our development skills fresh, and it allows us to role play the customer a little bit, which we always think is important, right?
Sure.
To provide the best service possible to your customer, walking 1,000 miles in their shoes, kind of thing. So yeah, so grilltender.com can show people our product, and it's available, and it cooks a perfect brisket. You don't have to be a Texas pitmaster. Our claim to fame is even a California person can do real barbecue with the grill tender.
That's amazing, and I love that. But sadly, Robert, we're coming to the end of the show, so let's close with mentioning where people can get more information about yourself and BriteLab online.
Sure. Just go to www.britelab.com. It's BriteLab. It's spelled a little different because we're different, right? We're very unique. We're OEM certified guys. So BriteLab.com, and you can see what we do, and you can access a lot of information from there.
Perfect, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I enjoyed this very much. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.